I grew up in the United States in the 70s and 80s, which was pretty much a boom time for Cold War paranoia against the communists. We were all absolutely terrified of the Russians. I mean, one of my friends actually even had a bomb shelter in his backyard. According to the Reagan administration, the communists were on the verge of overrunning us from the south. A bit like the swarms of killer bees and fire ants that were supposedly on their way up from Mexico at about the same time. Like a lot of Americans, I was convinced we were on the verge of a nuclear holocaust. But you know, then the Berlin Wall came down and the Cold War ended. And the threat of communism just kind of evaporated. I guess the contemporary equivalent would be if we woke up one morning and found out that the Muslim fundamentalists were just simply no longer our enemies. But it's interesting though, because when you think about it, a lot of the things that we're afraid of turn out to be unfounded in retrospect. I mean, think about it. You have that whole Y2K thing, and then this bird flu scare. And throughout history, people have been consistently convinced that an asteroid was about to smash into the Earth and kill us all. But none of these fears ever really amounted to anything. I don't know, maybe human beings are simply a paranoid bunch, and we have some kind of innate need to worry about things, whether they're irrational or rational or not. Doesn't really matter. It's a bit like that joke about the agnostic dyslexic insomniac. You know, the one who stays up all night wondering if there really is a dog. Or take the threat of terrorism for a minute. I mean, we're all really worried about the terrorists these days, but I mean, when you think about it, how much of a threat do the terrorists really pose to us? I mean, do you realize that more people are actually killed each year by rampaging elephants than by terrorists? In fact, more than 200 people a year are killed in India. And in 2006, in the Indian state of Assam, one single elephant managed to kill 28 people before it was finally shot. And that's the equivalent to the entire number of Americans killed by terrorists worldwide in 2006. So maybe we're worrying about the wrong thing. In some cases, the gulf between fear and reality is even more extreme. A bit like some of these doomsday cults that you probably read about in the press. There's one in particular that was great, getting back to Russia. A few months ago, this group in Russia barricaded themselves into a cave because they were convinced that the world was going to end in May. Very specific. But a couple of weeks ago, the last remaining members of the cult kind of chucked in the towel and came out of the cave. You know, I guess they realized, well, maybe we got the dates a little wrong on that one. Imagine how embarrassing it must be when you realize that everything you think about the world turns out to be totally incorrect. I mean, granted, these people are complete lunatics, but it raises an interesting question about how human beings interpret the world. Because when you think about it, pretty much everything people believe eventually turns out to be wrong. I mean, back in the old days, scientists used to think that the world was flat and that the Earth was the center of the universe. Doctors used to drill holes in people's heads thinking they'd get better, but they usually just died. And Aristotle thought that women had fewer teeth than men. These all must have seemed like pretty rational ideas at the time. But with the benefit of hindsight, now we just think that they're a crock. But who knows, chances are in 100 years from now, everything we think today will turn out to be just as ridiculous. I mean, think about it. Because human belief systems, whether they're religions or political theories or even fears, are actually a lot like fashion trends when you think about it. I mean, they occupy our attention for a little while, seem very reasonable at the time, and then invariably new ideas come along and replace the old ideas. And when you look back at the old ideas, they usually look pretty ridiculous.